Hey all, it's Matt, your average gamer. Today we've got the top 5 quality builds and setups for you. Quality can be tough at meta levels like 150, but don't worry, we've got you. These are 5 awesome builds and setups that you can use at rune level 150 as well as higher levels to get great damage. For the purpose of this video, we're going to be taking on mainly side bosses as I'm waiting to start a new run on this character for my next upcoming challenge, which will be within a few weeks hopefully. For our first build, we've started with Bloodhound's Fang, and you'll see where to get it on the map at the end of the clip, as I'll be showing where to nab each weapon as well. Before moving on to our Bloodhound's build and setup, if you see a link for ExpressVPN in the description below, it's the amazing VPN service I've been using. You can keep your browsing safer and support the channel as well with the link below. That includes 3 extra months free from a yearly subscription through my link, so definitely be sure to check that out. Now, as far as Bloodhound's Fang, you get it from fighting the Bloodhound Knight that's in Limgrave. He's not too tough. I do get beat up a little bit here, but after we take him down, I'm going to show you on the map where to get this. And this is a weapon, a very powerful quality weapon that you can get very early in the game in Limgrave. And speaking of Bloodhound's Fang, one of the best quality weapons in Elden Ring, at rune level 50 you can hit over 700 AR. If you're max level, you can actually get it to over 900. Bloodhound's Fang goes best with bloodflame blade as it'll give it over 90 bleed in total, a little bit of fire damage, and allows us to get those procs while using its awesome Ash of War in Bloodhound's Finesse. Bloodhound's Finesse is great because it gives you moments of invulnerability and you can avoid many boss attacks and follow up with a forward motion heavy attack. This is a weapon that has carried many players through Elden Ring and was my first ever build I used to run through the game back around release time. It has become somewhat of an iconic weapon in Elden Ring, as most of us have experienced this weapon in some way, heard about it, seen a video about it. Bloodhound's Fang is a very popular weapon for Elden Ring, and we've got fantastic stats for you as well to take advantage of two-handing Bloodhound's Fang, stats, equipment, and setup. You're going to get a lot of damage out of this weapon, which is an excellent quality weapon. Talking more about Bloodhound's Fang, as far as this list goes, it's in no specific order, but this may be the best one on the list, which you guys probably already know. If you've been playing the game for a while, you certainly know a lot about Bloodhound's Fang, and the stats and setup I have is pretty much awesome for it at 150. As far as the weapon itself, though, it's always going to be a popular weapon because of that Ash of War, the ability to avoid boss hits while following up with powerful attacks and get a good amount of bleed as well. On the strange chance that you haven't tried Bloodhound's Fang yet, or if you're just starting out, this is something you should definitely consider building around. It can carry you through the game a bit, especially early on and in the mid game. Let's get into equipment for this setup. For equipment, we have Bloodhound's Fang, preferably plus 10. Any seal will do. I had a weightless seal. We did hit 51 poise. Shard of Alexander, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Ritual Swords Talisman, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman for some defense, and then you can throw in something like defense, strength, or dexterity tier, and then the faith tier for buffs. Let's get into stats. See similar stats throughout this video on most of these because there's something specific I went for. 1 or 2 of them I think I have a change in stats depending on the weapon, but the main focus here is to go a little bit lower in strength, 2-hand, get that 1.5 times bonus, and then have high dexterity to meet the quality. Affinity, which we're going to be using pretty much for all these weapons, although Bloodhound's Fang is naturally quality. Next up, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation here, we're at Redmane Castle because we're going to be grabbing the Flamberge, which apparently is either a French, German, or Dutch word, depending on the pronunciation. I'm not exactly sure where its origins are in terms of that. The best pronunciation I got for it was Flamberge, so we're going to call it that for now, and we're going to grab that at Redmane Castle. Once you're in the area right before the duo boss fight, just turn around, head straight back out to where the guys are standing there with flamethrowers. Keep going straight up to the roof here, and after you defeat the pumpkin head, or if you just want to grab it on the side of them, you can pick up this weapon which has innate bleed and gets a B both in dexterity and strength and quality, and is a good quality weapon overall in the Flamberge. I know the pronunciation is rough sometimes, but it is not an English word, and there it is at Redmane Castle. You can see it on the map there. It's not far out from the duo boss fight if you turn in the opposite direction. For the Flamberge, you have a lot of options for the Ashes of War, but I chose to use Giant Hunt as I've used it a lot lately. It's really fun to hit stuff hard, and when you get in regular hits, you can build up bleed fast too. This is a weapon that doesn't have great dexterity or strength scaling by itself. I believe if you put it heavy or keen, you end up with a B in both. or a B in each one individually. So quality actually here can be a solid option to give you more damage, especially as you get more levels. If you go past 150, you can get a lot of damage out of a weapon like this, and take advantage of the quality scaling for it, because the quality scaling is pretty much going to be the best scaling you're going to get for this weapon. Bleed here and Bloodflame Blade is just a bonus, as it's a medium-sized weapon, not fast but not slow either. Giant Hunt or any Asher Warrior you're choosing will do great damage with its around 650 AR on quality at the stats we have. Bloodflame Blade truly does complement it, just like it does with Bloodhound's Fang. This is a weapon you can get pretty early too that also has that innate bleed on it. It's easy to understand and use as well. As you can see the clip here, we did fantastic damage with Giant Hunt on New Game +7 against the duo Tree Sentinels, who can sometimes be a pain. If you're ever fighting these guys, I recommend leading one out, then fighting the second, rather than fighting them both at once. It is doable to fight them both at the same time, but let's be real, it's a lot more challenging. And yes, if you want a challenge, then go for it. But keep in mind, they have a lot of range. They have more range than what it seems at first. So baiting one and then going for the other is often your best option. Down goes the Tree Sentinels, and I just want to mention, as far as Giant Hunt, I'm starting to like it more and more. It's really powerful, and it's just awesome to use. It does posture damage too. Let's get new equipment. For equipment, we have the Flamberge, preferably +25. With Giant Hunt, any seal will do. We hit 51 poise. Same setup, Shard of Alexander, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Ritual Swords Talisman to get good damage out of the Asher War on this. And then if you're getting some bleed too, Dragon Crest. And then you can go with the Strength, Dexterity tier, and then something like the Faith tier for buffs. Stats is here. We're using a different Ash of War, a different weapon than Bloodhound's Fang, but we're taking advantage of the same type of thing. The concept here is 35 strength goes to around 52 or so with that 1.5 times bonus. Then we go high dex, and we're going to meet those quality standards on the weapon to take advantage of that and get solid damage out of it. You can see we did. This is a really fun weapon to use that you can add bleed on just like Bloodhound's Fang if you want to add that in as a bonus while getting solid physical damage out of the weapon too. Next up is the Naginata, which is for me a very popular quality weapon, or at least for most of us it's a popular quality weapon where it can hit over 600 AR. It can be boosted by Bloodflame Blade as well because of that innate bleed that's on it, and it is similar to the first two builds. The next two are going to be a little bit different, but this is another one that's going to be similar. You get this in Gale Tunnel in the second room to the right, where there's several land octopi. There's going to be one on the ceiling, so make sure he doesn't land on your head. This is another easy early grab in Caelid, and if you're new, this is an awesome early game weapon to pick up. I actually have an early game build for this, by the way, that I'll leave in the description below if you want to check that out too. For the Naginata, we're taking on the Godskin Noble in Volcano Manor. Here we'll use Bloodflame Blade and Repeating Thrust, a combo I really enjoy with this weapon. Run this two ways, and I'll show my setup, of course, either going for successive attack boost, you have that option, or going with the Shard, Ritual Swords, and Lord of Bloods like our initial builds for the first two. Either way, you'll get a ton of damage with Repeating Thrust because it takes advantage of this weapon's reach. For equipment, we have the Naginata, preferably +25 with Repeating Thrust. Any seal will do. We hit 51 poise, Shard of Alexander, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Ritual Swords Talisman, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, and then you're going to want the Faith tier, and then something like the Dexterity, Strength tier, or Defense tier. Let's get into stats. It's an ongoing theme here, but because of the fact that everything's time-stamped, I got to show these each time, even though we're utilizing the same stats and concept. We're going high dex, and then we're getting that 1.5 times bonus by two-handing whatever weapon we're using. We'll once again be taking advantage of the quality scaling, that B in dexterity, that B in strength, the over 600 AR, and the close to 90 bleed, or around 90 bleed, slightly over, that we're getting with Bloodflame Blade on top of all that. Solid setup for the Naginata. Next up is the Claymore, and this is the last one with a similar stat spread and setup before going into our final build, which is a bit different. You can get the Claymore early too in Castle Morn. When you go up the elevator, hug the right wall until you get into a room. You may get chased here, but the enemies are easy to face. They're easy to beat with pretty much anything at this point, even on New Game +7. This is an early game area. Chest when you walk in the room, and you'll nab another quality weapon that takes advantage of that B scaling and dexterity and strength and gives you solid damage out of the Claymore. Really powerful early game weapon too if you want to grab this. The Claymore is solid and reliable. And there it is on the map there in Castle Morn in the Weeping Peninsula. This is something you can also grab early game. This one I chose to use Stormblade, as I rarely use this Ash of War and I thought it would be fun to use, plus I wanted to show it off a little bit, and it ended up being really fun to use. The range and the decent physical damage goes well with our quality Claymore setup. Again, we are two-handing in this case. We need that 1.5 times strength boost because that's what's going to happen when we two-hand it. It's going to give us that, so we're going to hit over 50 strength with 60 dexterity, while also hitting around the soft cap for dexterity because that would be around 60. There's a lot of options for ashes. Several are better than Stormblade. You have a lot of options to work with here, but I wanted to show off a build for Stormblade, and again, it ended up being something I was able to enjoy, and I wanted to mix it up with the Claymore. Blade is solid after all, and there is, again, many ashes you can use, so the variety here is not going to be an issue. You can mix up a lot of these weapons with different ashes of war and do it to your own liking. There's a lot you could do with all of this stuff as far as quality weapons go, because you're going to get a ton of different ashes of war you can use and put it in that affinity. Personally found myself enjoying Stormblade, mainly because you can use it as safe range, and Commander O'Neill took solid damage from our choice of Ash. Speaking of this fight, if you bring him into the lake, he'll die from the rock geysers. If he's ever giving you trouble, you can bring him out there and kill him that way too. It's a very easy way to cheese that boss. For us though, we took him down with Stormblade. Even though we took some hits, it was relatively easy to do. That wasn't too difficult. Stormblade has a lot of range, and it's a really good utility Ash of War that you can mix in with something solid like the Claymore. Let's get into equipment. Equipment, we have the Claymore, preferably plus 25. We're using Stormblade on. Any seal will do. We hit 51 poise, same armor set, Shard of Alexander. And then for this, we went with the Ritual Shield Talisman for some extra defense. And then the Ritual Swords Talisman, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, and then the Faith tier, and then Strength or Dexterity tier. Or defense tier, and this is our same stats and setup. I do want to mention one thing real quick. If you're going with a light equipment load because it's physical damage, you can get more damage out of Stormblade that way if that's something that you want to do. You can use the Blue Dancer Charm if you really want to run around. It's a little bit risky, but you can get some extra damage that way. Lastly, we have Godfrey's Axe. Godfrey's Axe isn't really a strength weapon, as getting to 50 strength and then two-handing after you'll get way more from adding dexterity despite its descaling. Go for a quality build with Godfrey's Axe, especially at higher levels. You'll receive great AR and damage in return. The initial stomp can be boosted by the Roar Medallion, Shard of Alexander, and Highland Axe's passive. Keep in mind though, this axe, much like a war cry, and if you want to boost the follow-up charged attacks, you're going to want to use the Axe Talisman in combination with the charged tier. If you're using a lot of those follow-up attacks, you can boost that with the Axe Talisman and the charged tier. The initial stomp though is boosted by the Shard and Roar Medallion. Around a solid weapon to put quality stats into with a really cool looking Ash of War and some really cool follow-up attacks with Godfrey's Axe. This is a lot of fun to use as far as the weapon itself goes. Let's get into equipment. For equipment, we have Godfrey's Great Axe plus 10. We have the Highland Axe for its passive. Any seal will do. I had the Knight's Cavalry set on. We hit 51 poise. Shard of Alexander, Roar Medallion, Ritual Swords Talisman, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman. Then you can use the Charge tier, the Faith tier for buffs. It's really up to you. You can use the defense tier as well. Let's get into stats. Stats, as far as Godfrey's Axe, we did a little bit of a different setup here where we went into strength because we're going to two-hand get even more out of strength and then some dexterity too. But this also allows you to single-hand the weapon for decent damage if you choose to. You more variety, and even though you see bloodflame blade here, we're not using that because you can't use that on Godfrey's Great Axe. Unfortunately, as far as the axe goes, you can't apply anything to it, but you can get good damage and AR out of it by putting it and using it basically in a quality type build, leaning with a little bit more towards strength. Thanks for watching this one. I hope it was informative as always as we went over my top 5 quality weapons and builds. Remember, you can become a member now for extra mini builds every week. We've got more challenge runs and guides upcoming as well, and I cannot wait. If you're not on the Discord, definitely be sure to join that. There's over 500 people in there now. If you need any help with anything, there's always people there to help. It's been awesome. And if you're not subbed and you love overpowered PvE builds, be sure to check out all the awesome builds that are on my channel. Thanks for watching. As always, I will catch you guys there.